Christina Lamb is the Sunday Times' chief foreign correspondent, and joins us from Kharkiv. Morning, Christina.
Good morning.
Tell us what it's like there in Kharkiv. We heard earlier from someone there who said that the shelling is still there and residential buildings are being targeted.
Actually, I just moved from Kharkiv 2 days ago, so now I'm in Kyiv.
Okay.
There was a lot of shelling when I was in Kharkiv, but I mean, it's after Mariupol, I would say it's probably the most shelled place in the country.
And do they want to recreate Mariupol in Kharkiv, do you think, or will that even be possible?
I think that the Russians thought, because Kharkiv is near the Russian border and is 90% Russian speaking, that they would somehow be welcomed when they entered the city. Instead, they were greeted with enormous resistance and have never, so actually got into the center at the beginning, but were driven out and are now a few miles to the north and east of the city. And in fact, at the weekend, the Ukrainians took back a bit of territory from them, so they're a little bit further away. But obviously, it's a place that they're very determined to get. It's the second biggest city in the country. As I said, it's very near Russia, and everybody speaks Russian. Almost everybody you meet there have got lots of relatives in Russia.
We spoke to someone from Kherson earlier, and she was talking about the psychology of living in a place where there's such danger. That's obviously an occupied city, so she's talking about life there. When you were in Kharkiv, you spoke to people who've been living in the underground. We all know the sort of bare facts, I suppose, of the assault, and what's it like psychologically when you speak to people? How do they cope? Do they look traumatized? What does it feel like when you're there?
Yeah, everybody, I mean, even here in Kyiv, where things are going back to normal a bit, everybody, looks worn down. It's the sort of psychological toll of not knowing what's going to happen any moment, and knowing that this huge country next door is trying to take you over is not very easy to live with. And in Kharkiv, it's very eerie because it's a big town. And as you walk through it or drive through it, you see almost nobody on the streets. All the shops, offices are closed. And life has almost entirely moved underground. People are there's 30 underground stations. So there's lots of people in those. People are living in cellars under their buildings, in basements. So you just don't see people out and about. Although one of the first things I did see were council workers planting flowers and mowing lawns, which I was completely taken aback by. And that's them showing, resistance to the Russians. We're not going to give up on our city.
And, this is a war that's been going on for months now. We all remember at the end of February when it started. We're now in May. We've had various reports of it that could last a long time. And of course, if you count the war as starting to some people in the east of Ukraine and in Crimea, it started in 2014. Are people getting used to the idea that this could be, in the east of Ukraine, particularly, and perhaps the south, there could be violence, shelling, warfare for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the fear now, that this could, drag on for a very long time. I mean, the first conflict I ever covered as a foreign correspondent more than 30 years ago was the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. And of course, that it took the Afghans 9.5 years to drive the Russians out. So this could be a long, grinding war, particularly in the East. It all depends really what is in Putin's mind, which I think none of us know. The Ukrainians have shown incredible resistance and are getting a lot of help from the West. But how long can that go on for if the Russians, don't give up and keep on going?
Yeah, which must be possible. Speaking of the sort of help from the West, Boris Johnson's announcing £300 million of support. He's addressing the Ukrainian parliament. I think he's the first world leader to address the Ukrainian parliament. How significant a figure is Boris Johnson, and how significant is the UK generally? When you say you're a British journalist, what do ordinary Ukrainians say to you about the British government, the Prime Minister, the view of us supporting the Ukrainians?
Okay, so it's quite bizarre for somebody. I mean, I cover conflicts a lot in places where British are not necessarily very popular. And suddenly I'm in a place and there's checkpoints everywhere. So you're constantly stopping at checkpoints and showing your passport and saying that you're a British journalist. Every time, without fail, I've been welcomed, and people are constantly thanking Boris. At the weekend, I was with a group of kind of rich kids, I guess, from Kharkiv who'd gotten out of the city to celebrate one of their birthdays. And there was a certain amount of drink involved, and they kept toasting Boris. They toasted the Queen. It's extremely odd, but he is extremely popular here, if not at home.
And will it be a big deal him addressing the Parliament? Is that, I mean, how much is the Parliament even functioning in Kyiv? I know he'll be doing it remotely, and is the Parliament still a big deal?
To be honest, I've no idea. I don't know if they're still functioning. I mean, there's plenty of MPs around who've stayed and speak to us, but I wasn't aware that they were actually sitting. So this perhaps is the first time that they've sat for some time.
Yeah, well,
as I say, things are sort of slightly getting back. Lots of shops and restaurants and things are still closed here, but some things are starting to open up. So there's a lot more normality here than even 2 weeks ago.
And are journalists still popular, Christina? Just finally, that's another thing I imagine, in contrast with other wars, that journalists, at the beginning at least, were fairly popular. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I mean, with most people, some people were fed up with, like in the underground in Kharkiv, they've had quite a lot of journalists going and pointing cameras at them, and they're all just there on the platform. There's no privacy. They're living there night and day. So, but many, they know the importance of getting out the story and what's happening to them, and that they're dependent on help from outside. I mean, almost everyone you meet also asks that people send more weapons and thank us a lot for coming, which is nice. It makes a change, as I said.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, we're grateful to you as well. Thank you so much for joining us today.